Hi. I found some things I'd really like to share with you, so I made a video for you. And please forgive me if I don't look at the camera the whole time because I made notes and that will help me stay on track. So I'm going to read from that some of the time. Um, Hi. I just want to come humbly. Um, a lot of people lately have been having dreams, specific dreams about Jesus returning. So many that combined with what one person shared made it into the New York Times religion section this week. Um, this is completely not what I was expecting as far as the order of things that will happen in end times. And so I have spent the last 3 weeks looking into it and praying and searching and studying. And I'd like to share a little bit of the story of what's been happening as I've been doing that. And if what I share is wrong, hopefully the worst thing that happens is that you're more focused on Jesus than ever. And if it's right, it is the most important thing that we could prepare for in our lifetime. I know how hard this topic can be. Believe me, I have thought about it. I have prayed about sharing this because I know how this could sound. And I really hesitated about it, but I kept feeling like I needed to do. I felt compelled to share. So, but please try to keep an open mind. A few times in my life, I have missed really important things because I was sure that I was right already, that I thought I already knew. And have you ever been wrong about something before? It's always a possibility. And I found 1 Thessalonians 5:20-22 says, "Do not treat prophecies with contempt, but test them all. Hold on to what's good, reject every kind of evil." And so that's what I've tried to do in this study. Um, and something I've felt reminded of lately is that Jesus said we must become like a little child to enter the kingdom. So I think that having a childlike heart is an important feature for walking with Jesus in the kingdom, if it's a prerequisite to even being able to enter the kingdom at all. Um, so this is a series of events that got this whole thing in front of me. On my last trip to Indiana, before I left, the Lord had highlighted Matthew 16:25. I had no idea why. And it says, "You must be willing," this is from the Passion Translation, "you must be willing to offer yourself up to death as you continually surrender to my ways. For if you choose self sacrifice and lose your lives for my glory, you will continually discover true life. But if you choose to keep your lives for yourselves, you will forfeit what you keep." I had no idea why God was putting that in front of me. I just knew He wanted me to meditate on it while I was on the day-long drive. And I was already aware, just on a natural plane, that earthquakes have been really increasing. I don't know if you were aware of that. I wasn't until someone made me aware of it lately. That the average earthquake usually had been around 55. And recently, on a single day, there were more than 1,000 recorded by the U.S. Geological Society. So I'm not sure if that's the right name, but it's the U.S. Geological Report. Um, so that had gotten my attention. Like, wow. I mean, earthquakes are one of the things that it talks about in Matthew. But then the next thing that happened is I was going to YouTube, I think, to look up a recipe or something. And you know how it keeps track of everything that you're interested in. And the logarithm found me a video, and it was of this little boy that was not so little, actually. He's probably more like 10, 11, 12 in there somewhere. If I remember right, he had a skateboarding accident and he had to have a surgery, and he was coming up out of anesthesia. But in the comments below, a lot of people said, I have come up out of anesthesia, or I'm a nurse and I've seen people come up out of anesthesia, and this is not normal. And what happened is he began to say, Jesus, you are so beautiful. And he was oblivious to like all the people around him. His mom was there, nurses were there. He was in a shared room. You could hear other voices. He was just locked in, and he started crying. He's like, Jesus, your eyes are so beautiful. And he saw his dad who had died the year before. And he's like, Dad, oh, Dad, I miss you. Oh, I want to hug you. Dad, we've really missed you. And then he started saying, Jesus, I have not been good to my mom. I have told her no. I've talked back to her. And he's just crying. Jesus, you're so beautiful. I'm really going to try not to do that. And he is just locked in. And someone had started to take a video of all this, and the mom was scared because her husband had died the year before, and this is how he had begun to talk before he died. So I think she was afraid that her son may be dying, and she was, like, no, you've just been a teenager, and just calling his name and kind of trying to bring him out of it. But he was just focused, and it was really moving. Um, It really felt like the way someone would act if they had seen Jesus. And so I noticed a young man named Gabe had, it was his channel, and he was watching this video, and you could see Gabe's reactions to it. And I just looked at his channel a little bit because I saw he had highlighted this, and there was another picture of a little girl, and I clicked onto that. And she started sharing a dream that she had had recently, and her mom took a video of, asked her to share it again, and took a video of it. And in the video, the little girl had, she said, we started to lift up off of the ground, and you did too, Mommy. And there were other people lifting off of the ground, and we got clothes that were white, and we went up and up to Jesus, and we were in heaven. And she described Jesus, she described heaven, and it was so revelatory. It felt like such a little girl. She was maybe 5 or 6, and she was just describing things that it felt like you almost had to read the book of Revelation, and I think her mom was realizing, wow, this is pretty profound. Her best way of saying was, Jesus wore a white dress, and he had this, she called it a suit, but she's trying to describe the color of it, and her mom goes, was it a sash? And and just like a little kid, and then so I thought, that's really something. I mean, she's seeing what people would call the rapture, which I haven't believed in the rapture except at the very end. And then I saw that there was another picture of a little girl on his channel, and she had a very similar dream. People were being raised up, different family members were being raised up. They were floating up, they were going up to heaven. They were dressed in white, and in her dream, she said then there was a table, and there was a big dinner, and it was a table big enough for the whole world. And then after that, Jesus got on a horse, and we all got on horses, and we went back down to earth, and there was this big battle, and demons were running away from us because they were scared of Jesus. And you know, right about this moment, I'm feeling a little rattled because my idea of eschatology isn't matching up with these dreams. But I thought, well, okay, that's a whole different order than I thought. And I just kind of tucked it away. Um, and then, of course, the logarithms are always paying attention. So um, they started, and I started seeing all kinds of people were having dreams of a rapture of people being lifted up into heaven and of Jesus telling people, I am coming soon. And even I began to realize not just a couple people, not just a dozen people, there are so many, and they're recent. They have been happening so recently. And I was like, has this ever happened before? And I noticed people in different channels were saying they had been on for a long time. They've never seen anything like this. And one of them said, that there are hundreds of dreams, which I scrolled down and scrolled down and scrolled down and scrolled down this one channel that was just highlighting dreams. And it took me a long time to get even to dreams that were a few months ago. And so I'm like, this is dozens and dozens. I think this is probably fair to say hundreds of people are having these dreams. And since, I began watching some of them, and most of the people had never made a video before. They weren't trying to like get clicks for their channel. They seemed to hesitate to put themselves out there, but they felt compelled to do it. And that got my attention. And then I realized many of the dreams were making reference to September 23 and 24 of this year, which is the Feast of Trumpets. And one little girl got shown being taken up to heaven, and in her house there, she asked Jesus if she could go to her house, and he described how to get there, and she marched over to her house as a little girl would do. It was just awesome. And in the house was a little sister that her mom had never told her about because she had had an abortion. So when she told her mom, it was just very gripping. And the little sister told her that she was her sister, and Jesus had told her that her mom had had a choice. So the mom was just wrecked by this. A teenage guy had a dream. He heard a trumpet, sees this bright light, and was lifted up. He said it was like a father lifting up a child, and he just described how joyful he felt, and other Christians were going up. Some people have been having dreams that the trumpet calls and the dead start rising, and then the dead go up faster than the alive people being lifted up. One pastor had a dream and trumpets, people going up to the sky, and his heart was just saying, I'm going home. I'm so happy. And Jesus was receiving everyone on a platform in the clouds. And he just preached a compelling message like Jesus is coming soon. And he quoted 1 Thessalonians 4:16-17. At the trumpet call, the dead in Christ will rise first, and we will be caught up with them in the air. And I think that's what had happened in his dream. And so many people are having very similar dreams about Jesus returning for his bride. And there are so many of them. All you have to do is search on YouTube for rapture dreams, and you can hear them for yourself. So I was also alerted by someone that the word says that they will be saying peace, peace, and then disaster will come upon them suddenly. And I didn't look up that reference right now. I'll try to put it in the notes. And I found out that Saudi Arabia and France have been trying to broker a peace deal with Israel, that they become a two-state solution where Palestine would be a state and Israel would be a state, which I know they've been trying to convince Israel to do that for some time. But the thing is that Saudi Arabia and France are meeting again with Israel. Today's the 10th. They were supposed to meet yesterday, and then they're going to bring this to the United Nations Assembly, which meets on September 23, 24, the Feast of Trumpets this year. And so it's been all in the news, peace, peace. But just yesterday, Israel took out 5 Hamas key leaders in Qatar, and that stirred up a hornet's nest. And then the news now, Israel is really like being seen as wrong because Qatar was trying to create a peace talk and a ceasefire, and So the fact that Israel took out the leaders that have been holding their people captive, that planned the whole attack on October 7th, has really stirred up a fire. And apparently, from one report, there are already enough nations in the United Nations that are prepared to vote for a two-state solution, that it can override the United States vote. So if the nations surround Israel and require her to divide her land, that could very well go with a prophecy in Daniel. And I think I talk about that a little bit later, which is a very profound prophecy and talks about the beginning of 7 years. So I'm like, okay, that's happening. Or has the potential. There's never been such a strong potential for Israel to be pressured into a two-state solution and have to divide the land as there has been, and to create a pact trying to create peace, but it actually won't be peace. So those things were getting my attention turned in this direction. And then I ran into a man named Joshua's prophecy online, and he's unknown as far as like having a big church or ministry. But God also revealed like into my heart. Yeah. And the shepherds were unknown too, when I came the first time. So, but to me, he seemed humble. He seemed biblically sound. He seemed authentic. He didn't seem at all power seeking or attention seeking. He has a channel. He admitted it didn't grow very fast. When God wanted him to get the word out about what he felt from the Lord, he reached out to other people to try to get the word out, but he's not like trying to grow this big channel or something. So that, at least that helped me to hear from him a little bit more. He's had encounters with the Lord throughout his life, and I wrote a summary of what he shares in the notes below and how to listen to the whole thing yourself. He had several times where the Lord said things to him throughout his life, but the two that I wanted to share here are these. One would that there would be no World Cup in 2026 because life on Earth will not be business as usual for those left behind. And he had not been following soccer, so he had to look and see, was there a World Cup in 2026? And there is. And then another time that the Lord came to him, and this was a whole series, and you can read you can get into all the details. But he felt like the Lord spoke to him from the time Israel became a nation in 1948. And he got this in 2018, I believe. From the time Israel became a nation in 1948, there will be 77 years to the Exodus. And the way the Lord used the word Exodus, he had the sense like the Lord's talking about rapture. And he looked up Exodus, and one of the meanings is a mass departure. And then he felt like the Lord went on to say, on the Feast of Trumpets, on the 23rd and 24th of September 25, I will come to take my church. In these 2 days, no one knows the day or hour I will come. And then after, there will be a 7-year tribulation on earth for those left behind. On the Day of Atonement of the 15th of September 2032, I will come to earth as king. Now, hang on in there with me to the end. I know that sounds radical. I mean, I was convinced it was not wise to watch for Jesus' return that way or say a season that it could happen. People have made such mistakes over and over with their timing, and a lot of people have been hurt and disillusioned. And so that was one of the reasons I thought it was a really bad idea. But the New Testament model is that we are to test prophetic words, and Paul commended the Bereans. So I went to studying. Since these other dreams and everything were happening, I'm like, okay, maybe I should take a look at this. Okay, first of all, it seemed to me to contradict what Jesus himself said, no one knows the day or the hour. So it seemed like a really bad idea to name a day or the hour, or to claim that Jesus had said there was a day or the hour. And only the Father knows. And as I tried to keep an open mind and not instantly shut it out and to test things, I kept finding out that there were assumptions I had and things that I had missed, which was really unsettling. And I will understand if this is unsettling for you too. This may be really uncomfortable, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make it uncomfortable. I know when we feel sure of what's true, it just really helps us feel secure, like we know our world and we know what to expect. But after learning the really hard way a few times, but being utterly convinced that I already knew the truth, but actually I was wrong, I want to learn from my mistakes. And so I'd rather be wrong than blind. So I kept studying. And it turned out that the Feast of Trumpets is referred to as the feast where no one knows the day or the hour. It's a Hebrew idiom. The Feast of Trumpets is the only feast to fall on the new moon. In Hebrew culture, new moons are not official until at least two witnesses see the tiny sliver of the moon appear. Sometimes weather keeps that from happening. And the Feast of Trumpets is a 2-day feast, and the official beginning of the feast depended on those sightings of the new moon. So they would say, no one knows the day or the hour when it would begin. And it turns out that only the father knows the day or the hour is related to the betrothal slash home construction process in the Hebrew tradition. Only the father knows the day and the hour. And what it means in the Hebrew tradition, the groom to be would visit the home of his intended bride with his father and make betrothal arrangements. What would seal the agreement is if she would drink from the cup he extended. When Jesus had the Last Supper with his disciples, apparently the language he used about, I go to prepare a place for you, and the third cup during the meal was mirroring a Hebrew betrothal, which that's really beautiful. He would then go build a room onto his father's home, and when the father was satisfied with that room, he could go and get his bride. She, on the other hand, had to go get ready and never know when he was coming. She had to apparently have her dress ready to go. I don't know if she slept in it or what, but she had to be ready. I also found out that lo and behold, Jesus actually expects us to know the season of his return. And that was super surprising to me. I did not see that coming. It turns out that Jesus is expecting us to be very close on the timing. As I studied, I started to find out that some of my best reasons not to watch for Jesus to come in a particular season didn't hold water. There's so much I was filtering out that I hadn't realized I was filtering. I learned that, okay, I had believed Jesus will come like a thief in the night. And I found out I was wrong. In 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 through 4, it says, he will come like a thief in the night, but that it's not supposed to be like that for us, that we are children of the day and not of the night, lest he come like a thief to us. In other words, it's not meant to be a thief in the night for us because we're children of the day. And I realized as I went on studying, Jesus was put out with the religious leaders for not recognizing the timing that he arrived. And that in fact, Jesus rebukes the church of Sardis in Revelation and says in those 7 letters, you need to wake up, or I'm going to come like a thief in the night, and you won't know the hour I'm coming. So he's rebuking them for sleeping and not being aware of the timing of his coming. I never saw it before like that. He expected them to know when he was coming. It was only if they stayed sleeping, they weren't going to recognize it was time for him to come. And then I found also Hebrews 10:35, it says, gather as you see the day arrive. And this is another aspect of how maybe revelation is starting to open to us now that we couldn't have seen before. Daniel was told in the book of Daniel to seal the revelation till the time of the end. And then in Revelation, we see the one worthy to open the scrolls is Jesus. So I think I was wrong. I think he does want us not to be caught off guard by his coming. We just won't have it down to the day or the hour exactly. Is that possible? I think that's what I'm reading here. Joel 2 says that in the latter days, children and old people will dream and have visions. And I started to realize right now, it is not exaggeration. It's very possible that thousands of the people, because I'll look at a dream and then I'll look down in the comments, and many people didn't make a video, but they're saying, I had a dream too, or my son had a dream too. So it's like multiplied. If you see a video of one dream, there's so many other people that have had one too who didn't make a video. And these are happening like in so many of them have happened in the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's just like an explosion. If you do a search of rapture dreams, you'll see that this is true. And under each dream, there's so many others that are commenting that they had one. And so studying through this emphasized to me that also so many of the key things that Jesus did to redeem us and to establish the church was on a feast. And I'm quoting here from an AI search. He fulfilled 4 of the 7 major feasts of Israel during his first coming. He was crucified on the day of preparation for the Passover, serving as the ultimate Passover lamb whose blood provides atonement for sins. He fulfilled unleavened bread by being buried in the tomb during the days of the feast of unleavened bread, symbolizing his sinless life and the removal of sin represented by leaven. He fulfilled first fruits by being resurrected on the very day of the feast, establishing himself as the first fruits from the dead and the first to conquer death. And finally, he fulfilled Pentecost, also known as weeks or Shavuot, by the outpouring of the Holy Spirit upon the disciples. So, since he has been so orderly about it so far, it would follow that he would fulfill the other 3 feasts as things unfold. If he does it this way, the next one to be fulfilled in the order throughout the year of the 7 feasts is the Feast of Trumpets, which includes Rosh Hashanah, which is called the head of the year, if he does them in order like he did the others. Then would come Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, and last the Feast of Booths or Sukkot. So it makes sense for us to watch the feasts carefully. Also in Mark 13, Jesus refers to the fig tree branch putting out leaves. And I found out that a lot of times in scripture, the fig tree is a word picture for Israel. I did not know that. And then he said, this generation will not pass away. After he talks about the fig tree putting out leaves, he says, this generation will not pass away before they see all these things. And the things are, he had just described in Mark 13, all these things about the end times. And he does that, I think it's Matthew 26 as well. So he's saying this generation, after the fig tree puts out its leaves, will not pass away before they see all these things that he just described about the end. So Israel was established in 1948, and Moses said a generation, because Jesus said this generation will not pass away. Moses said a generation is 70 years, or if by some manner of strength, 80. And Israel is currently 77 years old since 1948. And there's a pattern that I found later that comes in about that that 77 years. So I I I have been through a process. I felt kind of like God was shaking me and turning me upside down because I had had quite a few beliefs that prevented me from thinking anything remotely like these dreams was what was about to happen. I saw us going all the way through the tribulation. I think I talk about that in a little bit here. So I began to realize there were several things that my current beliefs had prevented me from seeing. I thought all believers would go through the tribulation, be part of that multitude in Revelation that had cleansed their garments in the tribulation, and that the return of Jesus was after all that happened. And I've spent weeks studying, and what I have been finding has gripped me. Um, I believe Jesus' return, like I was just saying, is going to be after the tribulation. Otherwise, why does it say multitudes are standing before the throne who cleansed their garments in the tribulation? I thought that the rapture was basically, I had a really poor idea of the rapture. Um, I thought it was a modern day concoction to try to find an easy way out of a really hard time on earth. And honestly, it's a time that I have felt scared about since I was a small girl. But as I kept searching and I listened to a study of the book of Peter by John Bevere, and I found out in that study that contrary to the idea that the rapture was a recent concoction from the Schofield Bible, at least 4 writers of the very early church wrote about the saints being raptured. Irenaeus, who was discipled by Polycarp, who was himself discipled by John, who was shown the book of Revelation by Jesus. So Irenaeus is just one person away from John. When in the end, he writes, when in the end that the church will be suddenly caught up from this, then it is said, there will be tribulation such has not been since the beginning, nor will be. So, okay, let me read that because I stumbled there. When in the end that the church will be suddenly caught up from this, then it is said, there will be tribulation such has not been since the beginning, nor will be. I had no idea. There's a man named Shepherd of Hamas. He wrote in AD 150, declare to the elect, this, this beast, he talks about the Antichrist. If you prepare yourself with all your whole heart, you shall be able to escape it. And I remember how Jesus said, pray that you can escape all these things. And it's not that we're afraid of tribulation, because the word says we'll go through trouble. We will go through that word is also tribulation. But we are praying to escape the great tribulation, which I discovered the Bible ties together with the wrath of God. A man, I think his name is Hippolytus, who was a church father in the 300s AD, said, those who hear the sound of the first trumpet stand before the Lord. They do not resurrect after the wrath is poured out, but before it begins. And another man, Ephraim the Syrian, who lived in AD 373, said, because all saints, the elect of the Lord, are gathered together before the tribulation, which is about to come, and be taken to the Lord. So that took out my idea that rapture was concocted lately. And if someone as close to John, who got the book of Revelation, as Irenaeus was, believed that Jesus would come for his church before the Great Tribulation, I figured I need to take another look at it. because John got the revelation from Jesus. And he discipled Polycarp, who discipled Irenaeus. Also, in John Bevere's study of 2 Peter, I noticed there's a reference to two different ways of coming, of Jesus coming in the Bible, coming in the clouds and a coming where he sets his feet on earth. And as I tried on that possibility with the different passages about his coming, it actually started making sense, because some of the passages talk about being caught up with him into the clouds, and some of them talk about him coming down and doing things like splitting mountains in the so doing of coming down, and being a man of war and rescuing his people and slaying his enemies. And if he comes twice, this all starts making sense. And we do have a precedent for him protecting his people in Goshen while he judged the gods of Egypt with all those plagues. So it's not unlike his former character to do something like that. And I started realizing I may have had a dogma about the end times and may have missed something. It's like, go figure. It's possible to miss big things. It's possible to have an idea that we already know. And I think I've done that. I think I've done that. And it's humbling, but I really, I want to let the word be right. I want to be wrong. If there's something I'm missing, I want to see it. I also found out there's a lot of precedent for God to alert people before he does things. And I'll only put a few of the examples here. He told Noah about the flood. He told Agabus about the coming famine in Jerusalem. He told the school of the prophets that Elijah was going to be raptured. I'm sure you can think of more examples of him giving warnings. It gave new meaning to the Lord does nothing without revealing it to his servants, the prophets. And I started to wonder, could these dreams and these prophecies that this man Joshua got, could they now be tied back to the Hebrew wedding customs as well? I found out that when the bridegroom was ready to come, when he was able to come, his father released him to come, that when he was still off in the distance a ways, the bridegroom would blow a shofar and shout before he came to let his bride know that he was coming. And often the bridegroom would come at midnight and make all this ruckus. And this was to wake her up before he came. So since Jesus is Hebrew background, like this is his culture, and he used betrothal wedding language at the Last Supper, I am wondering, could all these dreams around the globe be the shout of the bridegroom to wake us up, to get us ready? And could he be coming at an appointed time, which is another name for the feasts? They're called the appointed times of the Lord, to fulfill another feast, just maybe. Just one thing about that shout before he comes into waking up the bride. I don't know if you put any stock in the book of Enoch. I don't know exactly what I think of it yet, but if it is actually Enoch's book, and it's definitely not scripture, but he writes that God told him 30 days before he was raptured to go and spend time with his family. And God gave him a 30-day warning. I just find it's a little interesting that about 30 days before September 23, so many dreams started bursting on the scene. So it's not, that's not one of the strongest points, but it's something. It's interesting to think about. Okay, so this is where it gets personal for me. I feel like God is showing me that there was an Easter egg that he hid. You know how they do those in movies? That he hid in my own life. As I'm praying about all this and just searching and studying and trying to let him be right and be willing to try on ideas that I really didn't think were right, and finding, wow, I think I've been off. I think the word is different than I thought. Um, he was reminding me that he told me years ago that my way back, he told me, your whole life is going to be a story. I know he spoke that to my heart, but I never quite understood what he meant. Um, he spoke to me about a husband. Most of you that will see this, at least at first, are going to be people that know my story. But I'm just going to review for a minute. He spoke to me about a husband. He gave me a car to confirm his promise, the car that I had he had asked me to specify, and he gave it to me. It was years and years and years of waiting. And along the way, he kept asking me to do acts of faith to obey him. He wanted me to buy these beautiful earrings for the wedding. He wanted me to get a hope chest and put things into it. He wanted me to buy a watch for the wedding. I'm wearing it today. He wanted me to start praying every day the list of qualities he gave me about this man, and asking, and keep on asking, and eventually even to buy a dress. 28 years later, which I just realized a couple weeks ago was 4 cycles of 7, he brought my husband, and then things moved quickly. He asked me to wait on him for the timing of the wedding. And then after we were waiting on him and waiting on him, he made it clear that it was to be on a feast. He had a friend help to confirm that for me by calling me when she didn't even know he was speaking to me about a feast. And she said, the feasts they're important to you. I'm wondering if it's to be on a feast. And he led us to the Feast of Esther, to be exact, which was only 2 months away. And he said we needed to get married in the middle of a feast. So we set up the feast with tables like in a sunray all around us, and we were married in the center. He made it clear we needed to give the wedding to him, that it wasn't about the bride. He spoke to me very clearly. It's not about the bride. It's about the bridegroom coming. And he had us announce my husband's entrance with his best man shouting, "The bridegroom is coming," and blowing a shofar. And he had us have "We Will Dance on the Streets That Are Golden" as the entrance song. And our sons came and gathered me to my husband under the huppah. And we even were to symbolize the bridesmaids that had waited with me and helped me to prepare for the wedding by greeting each of them and thanking them and having them give me roses for my bouquet, to make my bouquet. I had still been in the dark, though, about why my whole life would be a story until now. I think I finally see it. My life has been a picture, and the wedding needed to be at the Feast of Esther because it's for such a time as this, like Mordecai said to Esther, for such a time as this. My life is a picture of waiting and getting ready for the bridegroom to come, and of persisting believing. And when my faith would wilt, God would resurrect it again. He never wanted me to stop believing him. He even had me take a picture of that car he gave me and make a card that said, "Do you believe?" right by the photo of the car. And he had me frame it, and he wanted me to keep it in my bedroom in sight at all times. And sometimes that was so hard. But he wanted me to keep believing, and he wanted me to keep watching and be obedient. And the Father asked me to get ready And I'm so glad I did because when he came quickly and we even sounded a trumpet. And I had had to be ready in order for it to happen that fast for a wedding. He brought me to a marriage feast surrounded by the glorious comrades who had waited with me and helped me prepare. It's for such a time as this. It was like an Easter egg hidden in my own life. And I feel like I have to say this. I feel like I have to share this with you. I feel like I could be held accountable if I don't say it. So, at risk of looking foolish and, being rejected or scoffed at, or the worst case scenario, and if I'm wrong, I will be glad to personally apologize to each of you. Um, I've just been seeing there are some amazing things that God has predicted and said. Daniel actually predicted to the day, I hadn't realized this, when Jesus would make his triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Did you know that? That's amazing. There are uncanny details that the Lord has fulfilled, like how each of the four spring feasts were already fulfilled to the day. And there are many more absolutely fascinating things I found that point to this timing, like Easter eggs hidden for us to find. And I put a whole list of them in the notes below, and it's not even scratching the surface. There are so many more things that people are finding that tie into this, but just for the sake of time, I put them in the list below. So I just want to ask you, please ask the Lord about this. Please pray about it. Don't set it off to the side, and ask him to personally show you, to personally confirm it if this is true. And if you need to be a skeptic, tell the Lord so and ask him to show you with something that your skeptic feelings in your heart can understand. I love you all so much. And if this is true, it's a big deal. It means that if this is true, then it means that the 7 years of heavy duty tribulation is about to kick off too. And you do not want to be here for that if you can be spared from it. Like I said, there were a couple times in life I thought I already knew something and didn't listen, and it cost me. That's part of why I stayed in an abusive relationship so long. I thought it was true that I had to stay. That's how powerfully a currently held belief can blind us. If I'm wrong here and you listen, worst case scenario, you'll be closer to Jesus and more ready for his return. Is it possible that Christians who are lukewarm are the ones it talks about that didn't have their lamps trimmed and filled with oil and didn't get to come in to the wedding? Worst case scenario, if this whole idea of Jesus returning very soon is true, and you don't deeply prepare your heart as a waiting bride, ready, you could head into the worst time in history without having had to. And during that worst time, if you cling to Jesus and won't turn away from him, in the upheaval and the torment that that world system will put on believers, it says there would actually be no one left on earth unless the Lord cut the time short. It says people are going to be as rare as gold is rare. And Revelation says that many believers going through the tribulation will be beheaded. Very worst case scenario is that all this could be true. And under the pressure, some believers that hadn't been ready for Jesus coming recant under the pressure. So if you've been lukewarm or distracted, or if there's someone that you resent and you won't forgive, or anything that you're holding on to or that you love more than Jesus, make it right with him. Go back to your first love connection with Jesus. Read the letters to the 7 churches in Revelation. Ask him to examine your heart. I found out as I was studying, he offered to reward some believers in those letters to the churches, that they would escape the tribulation to come. But he didn't say that to all the churches. He only said it to one of the churches, actually. Ask him to search your heart and begin to watch expectantly with your lamp trimmed and full of oil. I love you all so much. I want each and every one of you to be ready and to be together. Don't set it aside. Don't scoff. Test it. Search it out. Ask him about it. As I said earlier, the worst case scenario, your heart is drawn closer to him. Much love to all of you. Grace to each of you. I'm so for you. I really felt compelled to share my heart. Thank you for listening, and I'll be praying for you.